All right, so thanks guys for joining today. My name is Patrick LeBlanc. I am a senior technical specialist for Microsoft, and I specialize in SQL Server, business intelligence, Azure, big data focus, but all the stuff in the cloud that is specific to SQL Server. And so today we're going to talk about synchronizing data with SQL Azure Data Sync. And so here's the session objectives. And if you guys have any, let me go back one slide. I promise I can do it. There's my email address. If you guys have any questions or comments, criticisms, I take them all, right? I take the good and the bad. Like I'm looking at the second slide right now, and I already see a misspelling in it. So if somebody wants to email me and say, man, you can't spell, I'll take that one too. Just please point out where I misspelled something, all right? And so please feel free to email me at that email address. I will definitely respond. I do travel a little bit for work, so the emails may be a little slow, but as time permits, I will definitely reply to your emails. Okay, so here's my first misspelling, so I fixed it. Maybe you guys saw it, maybe you didn't. So the objectives today, I'm going to explain to you a couple of our customer scenarios. I'm going to talk about some key features. Actually, I'm going to show you how to set up Data Sync, and then actually going to discuss some limitations and things like that, okay? So I'm going to add that to the PowerPoint also, all right? So what is SQL Azure Data Sync, first of all? It enables you to synchronize data across multiple cloud and on-premise SQL instances. Now, the interesting thing and the questions that I get asked most by people is that, is it replication? Is it log shipping? Does it use some type of always-on solution where it's mirroring the database? It's absolutely not. It uses the sync framework to maintain the changes, maintain the data manipulation changes across the different instances. And you can connect not only to cloud servers, but also to on-premise SQL servers, on-premises SQL servers. It allows you to synchronize table data. You can schedule the synchronization, or you can manually do it as you see fit, and you can do cloud to on-premise. A lot of people are surprised whenever I do this presentation, I mention that because you can take your on-premises data and take a subset of some columns. They're actually the new portal doesn't display the filters yet, but you'll also be able to filter your data where you can do subsets of data, certain columns and things like that. And you'll see that in the demo. So if you want to add multiple tables, if you want to synchronize a small set of data or a large set of data, you can definitely do that. And so, for example, you may want to offload reporting or something like that to the cloud. You may have multiple web applications. You want to scale out your deployment. And I'll show you a couple of common scenarios here in a bit on some slides. Now, one thing, and I put this on the slide, kind of doesn't, it's like one of these kids are doing its own thing, right? It doesn't really fit, but you may see this little blurb, this guy right here, hub must exist in the cloud. So when you configure your data sync topology, your sync group, you must create a hub, and the hub must exist in the cloud. So the cloud, not in the crowd, in the cloud. The hub is an instance of SQL Server that runs in SQL Azure databases, software as a service. So all of this Azure Data Sync, you must have a subscription. And then we'll go through some of the requirements here in just a bit. Okay? So here's some common customer scenarios. So you might have an on-premises database, and you may want to have the application in the cloud. So what you can do is you can synchronize your data from your on-premises to the hub or to some database in the cloud. It will go to the hub, and if you wanted to sparse it out to other ones, you can definitely synchronize it out to others. And then what you can do is you can offload reporting or have an application that's running, an application that's in the cloud hitting a SQL Azure database. And you can sync data in three ways, and I'll discuss that a little later. Okay? But now both the app and the database exist all in the cloud. So you have one single place to manage and maintain everything. Okay. So the next thing, you may want to synchronize or aggregate all data from multiple locations to the cloud. So let's say you have multiple branch offices or retail locations across the country, and you need to report on that data at a central repository. So what you can do is you can configure Data Sync to synchronize the data from these on-premises sets to the hub, and then allow reporting to happen here. Or you can set up another sync group and sync that data down back to some on-premises data set. So if you want to report on-premises, completely up to you. So you can see the myriad of solutions that's potentially available to you using this solution, right? So the next thing, you might have two different kinds of application requirements. maybe more transactional. You may have one that's more transactional and another that's for reporting. You can offload the report into another server using Azure Data Sync. So you can have different indexes, different schemas, whatever suits your reporting requirements. You can have that in the cloud or on premises, but you definitely can do it back and forth, between on premises.
Hey, Patrick?
Yes?
So sorry to interrupt you, but the bottom of your slides are cut off.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like they're not formatted right.
So like you can't see the text where it says separate reporting?
You can't see the second bullet point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna see, can I set Control A? Move this up a little bit. Hang on one second.
Sure.
We'll figure this out. Can you see it now?
I can see your entire.
Wait,
yeah.
Let me go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. And so you can offload it to multiple websites for reporting or for operational things. It just depends, right? Or you may have huge user loads, and you probably can't see this bottom part over on the right either, right, Rachel?
No, we can't.
Maybe you can't. Okay. 1 second. I don't know why it's not. Okay. Well, so you can see it right now. So I'm gonna keep it like this. Can you see it now?
We can see it now.
Okay, so I'll run it like this, just so we won't miss anything. And so you can see here, what I've done is I've essentially scaled out my deployment of SQL servers. So I have data that's syncing between these two, and I have a centralized repository. And now I'm pushing my data out to different places because I want to kind of scale out my deployment so one instance of SQL Server is not bearing the load of everything. So you got one SQL Server on, in this geo topology, and you got one in this geolocation of the country or the world, and the application co-located. And now you're essentially scaling out the deployment of everything, and you're leveraging the full means of the full resources of your SQL servers. Okay. And then the final example, I'm going pie in the sky here, so maybe I am stretching, maybe I'm fetching, but this is just a really complicated scenario that I put up. And so you can see that I'm syncing between on-premises, I'm going bi-directional syncs, I'm just doing all types of stuff. I'm going to the cloud, from the cloud to more cloud instances. So if you find a need to come up with this really, I'm going to say this, a really sexy topology, I don't know if I can say that. Maybe I just got censored by Pragmatic Works. Maybe they did the beep. A really sexy, I'm going to say it again, maybe they'll censor me again. For really sexy topology, you can come up with something like this, or maybe some people may call it complex. I'm going to call it sexy though, and where you can create lots of different things. A really large topology. What I'm going to do, I'm going to actually show you I'm going to show you some examples of how you get this working and how you deploy it and things like that. All right. Before we jump into the demos, though, let me see. So, Rachel, let me know if you can't see the bottom of the screen. So here's some key features, right? So remember at the beginning I said that, excuse me, it wasn't replication. It's not log shipping. It's all a hosted service built on the proven sync framework technology. Okay. It requires no code to set up. It's all done through the admin GUI. So you configure your sync databases, your locations, and your schedule all via the GUI. It's efficient. It only communicates the deltas between data sets. Okay, so it's not actually taking all the data and pushing it out and doing it again. So only the deltas. There's a configurable resolution policy. You can do row and column level filtering, which will be in the next release. This is a preview, so it's not in this current portal, but it will definitely be there. And then there's detailed logs available for monitoring and troubleshooting. And I made some errors and things. Hopefully they're still in my log, so I'll show you guys the log and you can see what the information is. Okay. So here's some system requirements. The minimum for on-premises, you need a SQL Server 2005 SP2. It works best with Server 2008 R2. A Windows Azure account and subscription. So I think you can do like a 90-day subscription. And for all you guys that have MSDN, go out and it depends on the level of MSDN, but you actually have some type of free subscription that you can leverage. It works on Windows 2008 and Windows 7 and Windows 8 also. and you must have an 86 or 64-bit machine. And I want you guys to notice that at the bottom of each slide, I provided you with the URL. So there's lots more information about the system requirements or any of the slides. And if you click the URL, there's lots of, oh, you can't see it.
No, we can't see the URL, and it's also getting cut off to the right as well at this point.
Okay, I don't know what it is, but so we'll just do it like this.
Okay.
So can you see the reference now?
I can't see the bottom.
Okay, so scroll down just a little bit.
I think the screen width is incorrect on your PowerPoint. The width is weird. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
What about now?
Yeah, now we can see it. Perfect.
Okay, so I'll just move it up on each one while I'm presenting. I hope that. So sorry. Okay. And so the first step, so now in the slide deck, I did something a little different because when I present this, people go, well, how do you get this set up? How do you, what are the steps? And there's definitely documentation out on the web. If you go to Bing and do a search for SQL Azure Data Sync, it'll take you to a great website that provides all the steps. Excuse me. I went out, and what I did was I consolidated them into my slide deck so you can see the, so you won't have to go to the web and kind of traverse all the different pages. I just put them step by step. And so some people may say, oh, you can do this first. There's really, the main thing is if you want to do on-premises, you need to install a client agent on your SQL server. And I'm going to show you that and show you some things, what you need to do with that. But you can do this now or you can do this later. If I'm planning on doing any type of on-premises data connectivity, I definitely, after I get my Azure account set up, I go out to the portal, manage dot, and I'm gonna show this in a second. I go out to the portal and I on that machine and I install the client. So let's go ahead and do a demo. So these is the step: install the client on on-premise SQL Server, generate your access key, configure the agent, and register the database. So what you're about to see, this is just a web page, and this is just a portal. And so I'm just going to go to my home page for my portal. And so you can see, here's the landing page once you're signed up and have your Azure subscription. So you can see everything that I have. I have a couple of VMs. I have a storage account, some cloud services. But then you can see here that I have some SQL Azure databases. So, and these are software as a service. So if I click on the SQL databases, right at the top, you'll see the sync preview. Okay. So if I click on the sync preview, you'll see the different groups, the different sync groups that I have, but you'll also see an agent. And this agent is my on-premises agent. So if I had multiple SQL servers that I was connecting to that was on-premises, you'll see multiple agents. Right now I'm just connected to one. And so to get this agent installed, you would go on to the local machine that you're installing from. Rachel, I just want to do a spot check. Can you see the bottom of my screen now?
You mean where it says Active Directory?
Where it says Add Sync.
Add Sync. I cannot, no.
Active Directory. I don't see that.
It's on the blue bar at the bottom.
Blue bar. Don't see
That's
that.
as far as we could go. So if you go to the left,
oh, okay.
That's
I
as far as
see
we can
right
see.
there.
Yeah.
Man, what is going on? Huh. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of do this. I'm going to size this because you guys definitely need to see this. So right here at the bottom of the screen, can you see that?
You got to scroll down, I think.
No, it should be at the bottom of the very bottom of the screen.
Oh yes, Add Sync. Yep.
Okay. So from the portal, so we'll just keep it like this. I apologize, guys. So you click Add Sync from the server that you are planning to configure the on-premises connectivity to. And then you'll get two choices here, Add Sync Agent and Add Sync Group. I'm going to go ahead and say Add Sync Agent. And right there, you're going to see, I guess I should have Zoom it running. And so right there, you'll see where it says Install One Here. Okay? So on the machine that you want to connect your cloud software as a service, your SQL server, to your on-premises, you would click that button, and it would take you to a page where you download and install an agent. Okay? And then you would give it a name. So where you can create some multiple agents, and you can tell it where you want to create the agent. Okay, so we're not going to create one because I already have one created. So you can see my agent here. Okay, so I'm going to hop onto my server right here, and what I'm going to do, I'm actually running Windows Server 2012, and so the sync agent is installed on my machine. And so the first thing you need to do is get the agent key. And what you would do after your agent is created, you would, excuse me, let's go back one page. You would click the agent in the list of available choices right here. So you see the agent, you click it, and then right at the bottom of the screen, you choose Manage Key, and then you can say Generate Key. Since I've already generated key, I won't generate a new one because I already have one, but Generate Key, and then you come back to your machine here, and then you say Submit Agent Key. And then you paste that in and say Submit, and everything is fine and dandy, okay, if you do it properly. And if you want to test it out, you click Ping Service, and it'll let you know, hey, I just successfully ping my SQL Data Sync. Okay. The next thing you want to do is register your server. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that when you're going through the install for this, it's going to ask you for credentials, and it needs credentials that at minimum that's a DBO, because you need to create objects, or it's going to create objects within that database for you to maintain the sync, and so it needs to create objects, and it needs to be able to read the data and things like that. And then once you have that, then you need to register the database. And so you can see here that I have one database registered called Sync. Okay. Once you've done that, you're ready to synchronize data from on-premises to the cloud, or from the cloud to on-premises. Okay. So we're going to jump back over to the slides. If you guys have any questions, I guess Rachel, you would tell me if there were any questions. All right. Okay. So the next step, we'll go back to my slide presentation. The next step is to create the sync group, okay? So you would add a sync in the Azure portal, you would configure the basic settings, and then you would define the hub, and you would add a reference database. So I'm going to go over to the portal and go ahead and walk through these steps so you guys can see that, okay? So you click Add Sync, you choose a new sync group, and you say, I'm just going to call this PWC Tees. Choose the location where you want it, okay? Click Next. Oh, wait. Choose a database. So you'll see what's available for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose the one that's in the South Central because that's where I'm at. And then you must put in a valid username and password to connect. And right here, your conflict resolution. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later at the end of the presentation. But this is just saying who wins if there's a conflict, the hub or the client. Right now, we're just going to choose the hub. We'll click Next. And then you choose a reference database. And the reference database is the database that's going to either sync to the hub or pull data from the hub or do it by directional sync. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. So just to recap, we'll go back. This is the hub, okay? Every data sync topology requires a hub that is a SQL Azure database, okay? Then you could reference databases. So you can see I have an on-premise choice right there. That's my on-premises one. Or you can choose one that's out in the cloud. Okay, so I'm just going to choose the one that's on premises. Notice that it doesn't require username password because I'm using the agent to handle that. Then I can tell it I want to do it by directional sync. So sync whatever I put in the cloud, sync it to the to on premises. Whatever I put in on premises, sync it to the cloud. Or I can say sync to the hub. Whatever I write on premises, sync it up to the hub. Or whatever I write to the hub, sync it down to on premises. Right now, I'm just going to say sync from the hub. And then if I click Check Now, it'll go ahead and create the sync group. I already have some sync groups created, so I won't add any. So once you have the sync group done, you'll see I have 2 sync groups created here. And let's say I wanted to add an additional server to my sync group. Okay, what I would do is you go and choose one of your sync groups. Just click it, and then click on the bottom where it says Add, and now you can choose the database that you want to add. So I can choose this one and put in the username and password. And then it would add that one as a sync group. All right? So the next step, uh-oh, you guys can't see that, so I need to go back to the next step is to define the sync data. So you would go into the portal, navigate to the sync rules, select the tables and columns that you want to sync. So let's go back to the portal.
We do have a couple questions.
Okay. You want to pause and I'll...
Sure. The first one is, do you need to create a database first before you can sync, or can you use a local database to create it?
So, can you use the local database? I'm not quite sure what they mean by the local database.
If you want to just clarify in the chat window, I'd be happy to re-ask it.
Absolutely. So in general, the way it works is your database exists already, your database in tables, because as you'll see in the next step, when we click Sync Rules, it's actually going to reach out and look for the schema of the tables. So maybe that answers your question. I just don't understand the concept of what you're saying, the local database.
He's clarifying upload from an existing database is what he meant by local.
Oh, yeah, so absolutely. You can take a database. You can import. So if we go back to the, and so we're gonna take a little excursion. So you can see right here, I'm on my servers right here, and then I can just choose to import a database. So if you want to import a database that you already have, you can definitely import one that you have out there already. But the great thing about Azure databases is, I'm going to hop over here, what you can do is you can actually connect, and I don't have zoom in on this machine unfortunately, but you can connect to Azure instances of SQL Server using Management Studio. So you can manage the objects and users and everything just like you would in on-premises SQL Server.
Okay, and we have one other question. How many servers can we add in a sync group?
That's a good question, and if you just hang on, I have a slide that kind of details all of that towards the end. Excellent. It's a really good question. So people are paying attention to me. It's great. All right, so let's go ahead and configure, look at how you would configure a sync group. So first you would choose a sync group that you want to configure, and then so we'll go ahead and choose one. And right at the top you'll see, so this sync group references two servers, one that is in the cloud, which is the hub, and we can zoom into this. And then you have one that's on premises, and the reason that I know it's on premises is because this is the agent name that I use when I set up my agent, okay? And it's not the hub. And then the next step, you go ahead and configure. Now what this allows you to do is you can do a manual sync, or you can say, hey, I want to schedule my sync so that it refreshes my data every 5 minutes, 5 hours, 1 day, 1 month. It's completely up to you. Right now I have all mine to manual, okay? Then the next step, probably the most important thing here, is that you want to go ahead and create your sync rules. And so you can see your sync rules, it's pretty straightforward. It shows you the schema that it's available for that particular database that you set up when you set up your sync group. And then what you would do is, so if you wanted to add a different database, you can click Define here and you can choose a different database. I've already set one up. And so you can see the tables that's available in my database. If I click the little arrow drop down here, you can see the different columns that are available. And I'm pretty sure that I have this guy right here is set up for sync group. You can see down here you can select, unselect. You can only choose some columns. You can choose all columns. It's completely up to you how you configure and set this up. Okay. Then once you do that, a save button will appear. You click save. There's some properties that you can view about each one of these. It shows you the hub wins, the status, the last sync, and then there's really good logs. In the initial release of this, it was a pain in the, well, I don't want to get censored again, but it was a pain in the butt to figure out what problems you face when running this. But now it's some really good robust logs, and you can actually click this and it'll copy it to a clipboard. And this is a log I generated, and then I deleted the sync group, but this is one error, and it just told me that I didn't have identity set up properly. And so I just needed to go fix that. But you can see here's something that said that it successfully did what I needed it to do. All right? And it gives you an ID, so if you run into any problems, you can call up support and give them that ID, and they'll know exactly what you're looking for. Okay? Pretty good stuff. All right. So now we have our data sync completely set up. And so what I want to do is now, oh, I can't do this, I forgot. So what I want to do now is actually show you some data being synced. And so in this demo, I'm just going to take some data from the cloud and push it to on-premises. I think it's from the cloud to on-premises. I may have it the other way, but something like that. Okay? So we're going to go over to my server here, and I have a reporting services report. And you can see right here that I have 7 rows. And if you can't see it, I'm sorry, I don't have zoom in. But you can see there's, oh, but I can increase the size right here. There you go. You can see I have 7 rows in this database, in this report. So one is actually pointing to the cloud. And you can see if I go to design here, well, we'll just go over here. So I have my South Central. And you can see that my connection string is just looking at an instance of Azure. So, and then you provide a username and password and select the database, just like you would for any on-premises deployment. Same thing, right? Just like I would for my on-premises deployment. And if I run my report now, the data is all synced up. So now if I go back over to, if I go to the hub and I just run an insert, it's on-premises, sorry, and I just run an insert here, and then I come to my data sync. So the question that probably everybody's thinking is, well, okay, so how do I sync this stuff? So if I just click the button right there at the bottom, I click sync, you'll see that it's running some processes now to try to sync the data up for me. Give it a second or so. If we come back and go back to our data tools and run the report again, we should see in just a moment, unless it fails on me. It did fail on me this morning. I had to drop and recreate everything. It was not pleasant. It's still syncing. It usually doesn't take that long. Yeah, I'm on. So we'll just let that run in the background. I'll come back and check on it later. So in the single run, and then once it's all done, it'll say, hey, sync successful, or if it fails, you'll get some detailed information as to why the sync failed. Let's try it one more time. All right. It's taking a little while in the background to get this done for me. Okay? So that's how you would get the data synced. You can schedule it or you can run it. And you can run it manually. And it should work pretty seamlessly. Okay? In the next example, I did something a little different. Oh, God, I keep forgetting about that. I actually have data that I'm syncing from the hub to a cloud database and on-premises database. Because what I want to do now is I want to push data from the hub. So in this example, I have a products table that's central in the cloud, but I need to make sure that everybody keeps the latest version of products out in their database. And I don't want to run processes, SSIS or anything to check for differences, merges, and stuff like that. So I can use Data Sync to say, hey, every morning, go ahead and push this data out. Right? Once a month, once a day, go ahead and push the data out. So we're going to go back over here. Let's see if this is actually finished up. Let's see what's going on over here. Still processing. Looks like maybe I think my page time. Oh, there we go. It's still one process running over there. All right, so it's back running. And so I have a different topology here. And what you'll see is that it references 3 different servers. So I have a server in the hub, an instance in the cloud, which is my hub, and then I have an on-premises copy of data of the database, and then I have a copy in the cloud because I want to push products out. And this allows me to maintain products in one place instead of maintaining it in multiple locations. I maintain it in a single location, and then I can push the data out to multiple locations using Azure Data Sync. Not quite sure why it's taking so long to run, but I'll go ahead and run this sync also. But I didn't even push any data, so that's not going to do anything. Even if it would work. So what I should have done. See, both of them are still running. Back over in my demo, I go over to my hub and I insert. So we just got the Xbox One. So it hadn't been connected long enough. We'll go ahead and insert, and we'll come back over here and run this. And so you'll see Xbox One there. And when the sync finishes, or if I rerun the sync, you should see Xbox One being pushed to both of them. Not quite sure. There we go. So this one finally finished. You can see that it pushed it up from the cloud, from on-premises to the cloud. So this is my on-premises SQL Server. And just in case you guys don't believe me, you can see here's my SQL Azure 2. I'll just right-click and say New Query that I'm connected to. And I'll go to Sync 1, which is my database. And then I'll say Select Star from, I think it's registered users. So you can see here that I have 8. And then if I take the same query and connect to my hub. Now, one thing when you're working with SQL Azure databases, you can't use the use. So if I say use sync 1, you'll see that it says, you can't do that. You have to do this manually, okay? And run this, and then execute the query, okay? So you can see that. So I'm in Azure, and I'm in the cloud. And so if I go ahead and run sync again, because I think I ran sync prematurely on this particular one. Oh, I said let's go ahead and run it on the other server over here. And so we'll go ahead and run the sync on, so it'll go to the multiple locations. Xbox One should get propagated out to multiple locations at this point. Or maybe we'll get an error. I'm not quite sure. I had some problems with this sync group earlier with my identity. You guys saw the error. And so once it propagates it out, and then it's out there. One thing that I did not put in my slide deck, and I'll be sure to add it before I send it to Rachel, I'll put it on my blog site, is that every table that you add in the sync rules must have a primary key. If you don't have a primary key and you go to sync rules, it won't even show it in the list of available objects. So if we go to sync rules and I created a table here, I created a table in my database and I tried to take a look at it, and I kept refreshing schema, and you don't see it, it's because probably the biggest thing is you have not created a primary key on that table. So it must have a primary key, or it just won't show in the list of available choices. Okay? And so I'm going to go back to my report. Let's see if we've done some syncing here. So you see it's synced down to the cloud, so it's probably still got to sync over to the hub, but it's pushing the data out, and it's all seamless. All right, so you can schedule it and just have it going. All right, Rachel, do you have any questions out in the window before I continue?
One just came in. Does it sync
Okay.
updates as well? And if yes, how does
Yes.
it identify the change records?
So it uses, that's a great question. Everything, the sync framework, and I'll add a slide with references to the sync framework. So the sync framework handles it all. There's timestamps. There's some tables that it creates in your underlying databases that handles a lot of the change detection. And so it does updates, inserts, and deletes. All of the DML operations, it takes care of those seamlessly through the sync framework. Excellent. All right. And so let's go back over to the slides. I hope you guys like my presentation there. Sorry it was a little slow. Let's see if it finished up on this guy. There we go. So now we're all completely propagated out to every one of the servers in our topology. You can do a bi-directional one also. So I can have, if I'm inserting data in the cloud, inserting data in the hub, and I wanted to have one copy, make sure what's ever in the cloud's in the hub and vice versa. You just need to make sure that you have some mechanism in place that increments your primary keys so they don't conflict, because that will definitely cause a problem. Okay? All right. So let's go back over to the slides. So there are definitely some limitations with data sync. So somebody asked a question, I forget the question, was how many sync groups you can have. A database can belong to a max of 5 sync groups, one data sync server per data center. And so that's listed in the region drop-down box. So what that means is if I hop back over to this guy, so let's just get rid of all these. If I come back over here and just go back to the sync preview and I add data sync and create a new sync group, you see this drop-down box? You can actually create one in each one of the data centers, and that's it. Okay, you can't create any more than that right now. The database table, schema, and column names cannot exceed 50 characters. So if you have tables and columns and schemas that are larger than 50, you'll get an error when you try to do it. You can't have no more than 100 tables that's part of a sync group, and no more than 1,000 columns per table. And this link at the bottom of this slide deck gives you a lot more information about some more of those limitations. There's very few, but they're definitely there. Okay, we talked about this before, and this question, and the reason I put this slide again, because people always ask the question about updates and inserts, it's all done through the sync framework. And so if you're not familiar with the sync framework, I'll modify the deck towards the end to include a link so you can go read about how the sync framework handles updates and inserts. It requires no code setup, as I said before, and you guys saw as I walked through most of it, there's nothing to do. You just absolutely use the GUIs to handle it all. So there's always that guy or lady in the audience, in the back of the audience. They go, okay, but what if I want to script it? What if I want to, do this? What if I want to do it this way? You can't. There's no scripting yet for it. Not quite sure if there will be scripting in the near future, but there's none right now. It only, like as I said before, it only communicates deltas between the data sets. It's configurable conflict resolution policy. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. There will be column level filtering in the original portal. It was there. They're migrating to a better portal, as you can see. It's more user-friendly and a little more intuitive, if I may say so myself. And then detailed logs that are available for monitoring and troubleshooting. So I'm going to jump back over to my portal. And so if you click on Sync Preview, come on. It looks like my page crashed. That's what it was telling me. So let's go back over to it. There we go. And if we click on my databases, click on Sync Preview, and I can choose either one. So we'll choose this guy, and then we'll click on Logs. So right at the top, you can see all the different logs that are available. And these are just informational, but if there was an error or something like that, it would definitely report that information up so you can diagnose those problems. I may have mentioned this before, but this is something that a lot of people requested. We have a lot of customers using this in the preview mode right now, and they're providing a lot of feedback as to what else we can add to the product. Okay? And so the conflict resolution stuff that I talked about a little bit before, it looks like I put the same slide in my deck twice. Let me delete this one. So the conflict resolution, the hub wins. So let's say, and this link provides like an illustrated example of it. The first row written to the hub is kept. So any subsequent changes that come in are discarded. So if you have a bidirectional sync group set up and you update the hub and some changes come for that same row from one of the clients, they're disregarded and the hub wins. So you be careful when you need to know. And so the client win is the exact opposite, right? The client database is written to the hub, and if you try to update it afterward, the client will win. So here's the thing that a lot of people, this is what turns them away a little bit. So when you're updating your sync group, and so I'm going to go back to the portal in just a second, but there's some supported changes. You can add a table to a data set. So your sync group, you can have data sets. You can remove a table. You can add a column. You can remove a column or change a column's width. And there's certain data types that you can change to it, okay? That allows you to change the column width. And I have a slide that details that. But you can't change a column's data type, okay, directly in it. You have to go to the underlying data source, change it, and then refresh the schema. So to refresh the schema, if we go here, and then we go to sync rules, and we made a data type change. So if I expand this guy right here, you see how it recognizes that it's a varchar, a varchar, whatever you want to call it, in an integer. If I change that schema, if I change the data, I can't change that directly here. I'd have to go to my underlying database, alter the table, alter table, whatever, refresh the schema, and then it would go to that underlying data source, grab the schema, and bring it back up to my portal. But as you can see, if I want to delete a table, if I want to remove a column or anything like that, you can do all that directly through a portal. So it's easier to maintain and manage that all direct from here. And I don't know if I showed you this here, but you can also say, I want to select all the columns. I want to unselect the columns. I want to select all the columns in all tables, or select all the columns all tables. So instead of clicking, you can just choose the table and then choose this to select or unselect all the columns. So they're adding some additional functionality to make it a little more usable, a little more intuitive, so people will understand things better. Okay. And finally, the final slide, and it looks like I'm going to finish up 5 minutes earlier than I thought, because I was going to leave 15 minutes for questions, but so sorry, Rachel. So here's some things we talked about right here that you can actually change the width of a column, but you only can change the width of a column for these data types: cars, varchars, in cars, in varchars, binaries, and in binaries. Any other data types, you just can't do it. You have to go and change it and refresh the schema. There are some things that require you to definitely drop the sync group and re-add the sync group, and this will be one of them. This link at the bottom gives you a lot of detail and information about this is what I need to do to drop this, to get the sync group recreated. Sometimes it's a pain in the posterior, but if you want to get it going, you got to drop the sync group and recreate it just to make sure that everything is running properly. All right. So again, my contact information, there's my email address if you guys want to contact me. I finished 5 minutes earlier than I anticipated on finish. I apologize. But here's my email address if you have any more questions, and I'm here at least until the top of the hour if you guys have more questions or you want to chat about Data Sync.
Great. We do have one question right now, and you guys, like Patrick said, if you have any questions, now's your opportunity. Put them in the questions panel, and I'll be happy to ask them. Our first question is from Sid. Can SQL Azure be used to store HIPAA and/or, I'm going to spell these acronyms out, PCI/DSS data?
So we are compliant to store PCI data. I don't quote me on HIPAA. I will find out and I will write a blog post. I blog at, I'll put my blog here, patrickdleblanc.com. And I'll post a blog post about the HIPAA, but PCI information, absolutely.
Okay, great. And his follow-up question, if so, what must be done to properly secure it?
So for the PCI information, nothing. It's all encrypted. Everything's taken care of on the back end, but the HIPAA data, I'm not quite sure. So for PCI, we handle it. Now, you know, your security, if you leak, I mean, you guys know, it's basic security at that point.
Okay, great. We have another question. It is there any limit on the size of the database in SQL Azure?
Yes, there is. For software as a service, when you're using SQL Azure databases, there is a 100, I believe it was just increased to 100 gigs.
Okay. Ralph would like to know, can the NSA crack the encryption?
I don't know the answer to
Yeah,
that.
that's pretty high level there.
I don't know.
You know, never underestimate anyone.
I don't know.
So Mark,
maybe you can. Maybe he can, right? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. Who knows what your level is in here? So just to confirm, sync replaces replication, and if not, what is the difference?
No. Okay, that's a very good question. And I need to add a slide for that. Sync is only used with Azure databases, and it's actually it's a framework that's used by .NET developers also. Replication is part of a full on-premises deployment of SQL Server. It does not replace. They're not synonymous with each other. They're two distinct, different things.
Okay. Can we write object and function?
In the Azure database,
I believe
if
so.
that's the question, yes.
Okay. Also, how do you create connection between application and sync?
How do you create a connection between application and sync? Sync. Really. Are we talking about data sync? Or are we talking about sync framework? Not quite sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's no coding. There's no API for sync right now that I know of. If we're talking about Azure Data Sync, there's no API that I know of so that you can create that connection. Okay.
Can we set up mirroring between an on-premise and an Azure database?
Not SQL Azure databases. If you do want to do something like that, you can create always-on or database mirroring between infrastructure as a service. So this particular VM right here, this is a virtual machine that I created in my Azure subscription, and so you absolutely can. You would create a site-to-site VPN connection between the two. Yes.
Okay. Can we integrate Azure databases with .NET application?
Yes, you can. Okay. The one limitation with Azure databases is you can't do Windows authentication. It's all SQL authentication.
All right. Can you use PowerShell for sync?
No.
No. All right. I believe that's all the questions we have for... Oh, no, another one snuck in. Can we create a web service to cloud?
Yes, are we talking about... That's a broad question. To cloud. Are we talking about the Azure database? Are we talking about... You can create web services in Azure. You can create a web service that looks at an Azure database. You can create a web service that looks at an on-premise database. You can do lots of different things. So cloud is kind of broad if they want to get a little more specific.